All right, we finally saw another NBA trade go down. A couple of weeks ago, it feels like forever ago, we saw Trae Young get traded from the Atlanta Hawks to the Washington Wizards. And now we have a new trade between two players that were traded a year ago at the 2025 deadline, are already on the move again. We have DeAndre Hunter going to the Sacramento Kings in exchange for Dennis Schroeder, Keon Ellis, and then the Chicago Bulls are also getting into the mix and acquiring Dario Saric's contract and 2 second-round picks to help facilitate this trade. Let's break it all down. So yeah, first things first, I'm just happy we have another deal. I feel like we were just in this waiting period ever since Trae Young got traded, and we were just like, what is the next domino that's going to fall? Are we not going to see another single trade up until maybe the Thursday deadline because of the whole Giannis Antetokounmpo trade saga, where no team really wants to facilitate any deal right now or give up any future assets because they want to have as many picks and as many assets in their possession if Giannis Antetokounmpo actually could fall into their laps. But we see the Cavs make a trade. The Cavs have had somewhat of a disappointing season this year. We expected them to possibly win the Eastern Conference going into the year, and that is still possible. But at 29-21, it feels like it's somewhat disappointing so far. They're 10th in net rating, 14th in defensive rating, and 8th in offensive rating. And I guess ownership, I guess Dan Gilbert looked at this roster and saw, you know what, it's just not worth being in the second apron and paying the repeat offender tax that they were already paying last year, with Garland, Mitchell, Mobley, and Allen making a boatload of money. They traded George Niang and Karis LeVert at the deadline last year with some first round pick swaps for DeAndre Hunter, who basically just spends a year here in Cleveland. They acquired him last year at the deadline, and he's already gone a year later. DeAndre Hunter this year is averaging 14 points, roughly what he was averaging last year with the Cavs in the 27 games after the trade deadline, but he's shooting 42% from the field, down from 48% last year. He's shooting 30% from three, down 12 percentage points from last year. Yeah, he was shooting almost 43% from three, and he's shooting about 87% from the line. 4 rebounds and 2 assists tonight. It just felt like he wasn't a complete difference maker for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Now, it's nice to have DeAndre Hunter as your sixth man, but when he's making over $20 million this year and next year, the Cavs felt like it wasn't worth it for what they were going into the second apron at $24.9 million next year. They thought this was the best deal for them right now. And you get 2 rotational players. The Cavs, I don't want to say had depth issues this year because I've actually liked what Jalen Tyson has stepped up with. Dean Wade, when he's been healthy, has been a really solid defender. I like what I've seen out of Craig Porter Jr., Tyrese Proctor, and Daquan Tomlin. So I'm not really saying that the Cavs have had depth issues because also Max Strus hasn't really played this year. Garland and Mobley have been banged up at times, so they've really had to go deep into their rotation. I think adding 2 guys for the price of 1 will be beneficial for them. They get Dennis Schroeder, who's now a complete upgrade over Lonzo Ball, who you can make an argument is the worst rotational offensive player this year. Lonzo Ball shooting 29% from the field. 29% from the field. You know how insane that is, especially when you're 6'5". He's shooting 26% from 3 and 66% from the free throw line. As Dennis Schroeder this year has not been great. He's not been worth the contract that the Sacramento Kings gave him in the offseason after he had a great run for Team Germany in the Eurobasket. And that's just pretty much why Sacramento gave him that contract. But he's definitely an upgrade over Lonzo Ball. This year, Dennis Schroeder's averaging 13 points, 3 rebounds, and 5 assists. He's shooting 40% from the field, 34% from 3, and 82% from the free throw line. I'm glad that the Keon Ellis saga is just completely done with. We just thought Keon Ellis could have gone traded for the last year plus now, and he finally finds a home on a team that can actually use him in a playoff series. Now, I do think there's a complete noticeable difference between how we think about Keon Ellis as a viewer of basketball and how I think the basketball landscape in terms of general managers and coaching thinks about Keon Ellis. I think we think Keon Ellis is better than maybe actually the coaching and front offices think he is, but I do think he's just a high upside swing who's a free agent at the end of the year. Keon Ellis is a good defender. He's objectively a good defender. He's a good point of attack defender. He fights hard over screens. He can play well off ball. He's going to sprint in transition. And I just felt like it comes down to also the mental aspect, right? He's been in and out of the Kings rotation. That might come down on you. And he's not really been part of a winning environment in Sacramento ever since he was taken up on an undrafted free agent contract. He played 16 games for them in 2023, 57 games for them in 2024, 80 games for them last year in 2025, where he peaked in his numbers across the board. And this year, the playing time has dropped 7 minutes a night. The field goal percentage, the 3-point percentage, the free throw percentage, every single counting statistic has also dropped as well. And it just feels like the playing time has been way too inconsistent, which doesn't make any sense because the Sacramento Kings are also the worst team in the NBA. Yeah, they're 12-38. This is the worst team in the NBA, and they had to give up 1 second rounder in this trade. Cleveland gave up a second rounder as well. Both those second rounders are obviously going to Chicago. Hey, round of applause for the Chicago Bulls finally getting involved in a trade where they're just going to take on a bad 1-year deal in Dario Saric. They could take that against the luxury tax bill. They could take that against their cap space, and they get some free second round draft pick capital. That's what teams that aren't competing basically should do. If you're not going to need that financial wiggle room at the deadline, because the Bulls, they're not making the finals this year. I doubt they're making it to the conference finals. They don't need this financial wiggle room. Take on Dario Saric and get 2 free second round picks that you can use, or you could just package those in a later deal at another time. So honestly, it feels like a breath of fresh air for the Chicago Bulls just to get involved in a deal, and that's what teams like them should do. And so if I was giving Chicago a grade, I'd probably say, hey, yeah, take on Dario Saric. They had to waive Javon Carter for him. Dario Saric shouldn't have been a Sacramento King to start with. The Kings were cheap in the offseason and decided to trade away Jonas Valanciunas for Dario Saric, a clear downgrade. And they definitely could have used a Jonas Valanciunas this year while Domantas Sabonis was hurt. I love Dylan Cardwell. I love Maxime Reynaud this year. They're fun young players, but if they were actually serious about competing, you don't trade away Jonas Valanciunas for Dario Saric, because they also wanted to create some financial wiggle room to go and bring in Russell Westbrook and bring in Dennis Schroeder, who they just eventually traded away a couple months later here at the deadline. So for Sacramento going forward, I don't hate this for them too, because they have so many guards on their roster. Will this mean more playing time for Devin Carter? I would like to think so. Probably not. Hopefully they run some Nick Clifford at the 1 now, since Dennis Schroeder got traded. Russell Westbrook should not be on this team after the trade deadline. There's no point in Russell Westbrook and DeMar DeRozan taking majority of your shots when you're the worst team in the NBA, and these guys are almost 40 years old. Russ has been a lot of fun to watch this year in Sacramento when you take out that they are the worst team in the NBA, so it's not resulting in wins whatsoever. I want to see Russell Westbrook with his high energy, high octane playing style on a playoff team, or a team that's at least trying to win games in the second half. So I hope the Sacramento Kings will now play their younger guys more. Devin Carter's starting at the point guard more. Nick Clifford starts at the point guard position more. Maybe this is actually like a Rob Dillingham team or something like that, and they go out and trade away Malik Monk. They trade away DeMar DeRozan. They trade away Zach LaVine, because this team has to completely reshuffle their roster over the next 12 to 18 months, right? Like, it's Clifford, it's Reynaud, it's Cardwell, it's any assets they get back and trading off their veterans. It's obviously Keegan Murray when he's fully healthy, and you're just hoping you land a Darren Peterson. I hope they saw what Darren Peterson did today against BYU. I know he didn't play in the second half, but he truly looked like a guy that can turn your franchise around, and that's what Sacramento should look for going forward. So if I was going to give Sacramento a grade for this trade, I don't honestly hate it at all, because Keon Ellis was one good to leave you at the end of the year. Dennis Schroeder has not been a positive player for you. I don't like DeAndre Hunter for the 2026 Kings, but I'm very intrigued about DeAndre Hunter for the 2027 Kings, given that he's got 1 year left on the deal. Hey, they could flip him. They could reroute him in the offseason as well. Because making $24 million isn't like a crazy deal to move. He's still 28 years old, and this team also needs wings, right? It's like been DeMar DeRozan, it's been Keegan Murray, and it's been now Nick Clifford. Hunter gives you another viable wing at 6'7". That could still be a solid defender at times. I think it's inconsistent. You'd like for him to be a little bit more physical. You'd definitely like for him to be a better rebounder and to crash the glass a little bit more and show a little bit more hustle out there. But I do think this is a solid grab for the Sacramento Kings, because for the Cleveland Cavaliers, I feel like this was more of a salary dump. So for Sacramento, I'm actually going to give this trade like a B+ or an A- for them. I don't mind it whatsoever. I think they got the best player in this deal, and he's 28 years old. He's younger than Schroeder. He's going to be on your roster next year, unlike Keon Ellis. So honestly, I'd rather you get DeAndre Hunter than lose Keon Ellis for nothing and have Dennis Schroeder at 32 years old on your roster next year, probably stealing minutes from somebody that should be starting at your point guard position who's a little bit younger. So yeah, I think this is a solid return for Sacramento. And for Cleveland, like, since I gave Sacramento a good grade, doesn't mean I'm going to give Cleveland a bad grade. I don't really mind this trade for Cleveland either. We know that this has big financial implications, and that's why they made this deal. I mentioned a couple times that they are going up against the second apron, and they just wanted to maybe improve on their depth, which wasn't really a glaring issue. But hey, you get Dennis Schroeder, who I thought looked really good for the Detroit Pistons in the playoffs last year, and he is a huge upgrade over Lonzo Ball, especially the way Lonzo Ball is playing right now. Maybe they like Craig Porter Jr. as not like a true point guard, and they've rolled out some lineups this year with like Craig Porter Jr., Donovan Mitchell, and Darius Garland. I don't really think that makes a ton of sense, but Dennis Schroeder definitely could be a little bit better of a defender than Craig Porter Jr. He's a little bit taller than Craig Porter Jr. and obviously has a little bit more veteran leadership under his belt than somebody like a Tyrese Proctor as well. So you go out and you get Dennis Schroeder. You also take a flyer on Keon Ellis, who you're probably not going to be able to bring back at the end of the year, but he's 26 years old. He's a good defender. It's another depth weapon since Darius Garland has missed a ton of time this year. So Keon Ellis can kind of step in a little bit, be that point of attack guy, and a better three-point shooter than Lonzo Ball. He's not as good of a rebounder or passer than Lonzo, but I think he's a better defender than Lonzo at this point in his career. And he's also a better three-point shooter as well. So for the Cavs, I honestly kind of want to put in that B plus A minus range as well, because when you look at the luxury tax implications, they save over $50 million long term, given that Keon Ellis is a free agent at the end of the year, and Dennis Schroeder is making around 14 to 15 million next year on a one-year deal. I expect another move from Cleveland. I think they could trade away Lonzo Ball. I would be shocked if they trade away Darius Garland or Jared Allen, but it's definitely a possibility this year at the deadline. They want to see what they could fully get out of Max Strus when he's fully healthy as well in the second half of the season. The Cavs are not that far out of the 1 seed. They're not far out of the 2 seed. They're essentially 2.5 games out of the 2 seed right now, so that's definitely viable for them, even though they've had a quote-unquote disappointing year so far, given their expectations going into the season. And I think this does make both teams better right now. I think I look at a little bit more for Sacramento in the future going forward, but I'm definitely keeping an eye on both these teams to make another move over these next 4 days. Cleveland could definitely look to trade away Lonzo Ball, or maybe a Jared Allen or Darius Garland splash, but I think more so Lonzo. As for the Sacramento Kings, I mean, DeRozan, Monk, Levine, maybe Domantas Sabonis could be all on the move as well. So I'd love to know your guys' thoughts and opinions on this trade as well. Do you think this could have a trickle effect? Do you think that we are going to see now maybe the floodgates open in terms of NBA trades, that we finally got one since the Trae Young deal? So now we've had 2 trades this year. The trade deadline is this Thursday. Let me know what you guys think about this deal as well. Drop a thumbs up if you guys did enjoy. Catch you on the next one. Peace.